So hello everyone, it's Gihan Pereira here and welcome to this presentation where we're talking about a topic that's a very hot topic and on the lips and minds of lots of people now, which is artificial intelligence. And so today we're talking about competing in the age of AI. My goal here is to get you thinking about AI from a business perspective. So I've run other sessions where I actually demonstrate some AI tools like ChatGPT and other things like that. This is not that. This is for you to understand AI from a business perspective. So my goal here is to get you thinking about what is AI, what's a possibility for it, are we ready for it, and what do we need to do to be ready for it? Okay, let me tell you a story about AI, and this is kind of a recent story, but it's 2 years ago now, so it's like ancient history. There was some research done by Oracle, and they, in the midst of the pandemic in 2020, late 2020, they interviewed employees from all around the world, and they said they asked them about their well-being, about what things they like at work. And most people said this was the most stressful year they've ever had. Not surprising, because we were in the midst of a global pandemic. That wasn't surprising. But what was also surprising was something else that came out of that research. And I posted that research in 2020 on LinkedIn, and you may not be able to see this in a lot of detail, but it's an article from Fast Company. And the headline of the article says why people are turning to robots instead of humans when they're stressed and they've got mental health issues at work. And this kind of blew up my LinkedIn feed. I got lots of comments, lots of views. There were people arguing, saying there's no way that any software, any computer could be as good as a mental health professional. There were other people saying, no, it actually can help us, and so on. And so it really was a debate around that. And so people at that time, which was only 2 years ago, weren't really seeing the true power of AI. So the research that came out in 2020 was basically this, that said that 2/3 of people would rather talk to a robot, in other words, artificial intelligence, than a human about the mental health, the anxiety, the stress that they were going through in 2020. The year after that, Oracle ran the same study. They asked them again, similar sort of questions. Here's something else that came out of it in 2021. It said that most people, like 4 out of 5 people, believe that AI can support their career better than their manager or other humans can. So now the reality is it's not AI alone and it's not humans alone. It's actually the combination of them that's really powerful. But at this time, lots of people didn't realize the power of artificial intelligence. And then we reached a tipping point in November last year when ChatGPT from OpenAI became public. And suddenly everybody had free, public, open access to the power of AI. And so this has been simmering away in the background for a long, long time, but suddenly everyone realizes what its power is. So much so now that lots of people are using it, but lots of leaders and managers are not quite yet on board because they haven't quite seen the value of it. And this is really what I want to share today, and hope I'll give you some awareness and some next steps when you're looking at AI. In fact, some research done a couple of weeks ago said that 70% of employees are using ChatGPT without telling their managers and bosses about it. And there's a number of reasons for that. There's a number of good reasons, not so much that they're not telling their bosses, because there's good reasons why bosses haven't embraced this fully yet. And today I want to actually give you some of those reasons and perhaps help you overcome some of those obstacles for yourself and your team and your organization. As I said, this has been going on for a long time. So I, many years ago, graduated from the University of Western Australia with a computer science degree, and my honours thesis was about artificial intelligence. So this has been going on for more than 30 years now. But as I said, it's been simmering away in the background until suddenly we've reached this point where everyone knows about it. So broadly, what I want to do is I want to go through 3 areas. So, and as I said, this is a high-level business perspective of how you can engage and use AI in your organization. So the first thing is, what does it mean for customers? What does it mean for solving problems? So it's not just this cool, fancy new tool, but what does it actually mean for you in bottom line results? The second thing is, what's it mean for your team? Because what we want is team members at all levels to embrace AI as well. And then there's some really important governance questions about ethics and privacy and security and so on around AI. So we're going to, broadly, that's what we're going to talk about today. I run a program called Future Scenarios, and it's based on this concept called scenario planning. And let me give you the broad overview of that. I'll do that very quickly before we jump back into the AI conversation. Scenario planning was started by Shell in the 1970s, because the leadership at Shell realized that there are a lot of things changing in their world, even at that time. So they put a small group of people, literally 3 men, put them in a room and said, why don't you assess what the future is going to look like and then come and tell us? And so these guys worked together for 6 months and they came up with these various scenarios. What happens if there's war in the Middle East? What happens if Jimmy Carter becomes US president? What happens if the OPEC countries restrict the supply of oil? And they came up with these scenarios. They assessed them. They gave them probabilities of how likely they had to happen. Then they took them to Shell leadership and they said, here are some scenarios. And the leader said, this is fantastic. Which of these is going to happen? And they said, no, that's not the way it works. We're giving you multiple scenarios for the future and make your plans based on the most plausible one, but have backup plans so you can switch if you need to, if the world changes. And they showed great foresight way back in the 1970s and 1980s. And of course, we have this now, that our world is changing so fast that we've got more scenarios to look at. So in this Future Scenarios program, I take leaders through these 4 steps. I'm wondering if anyone here has done that with me. I'm not quite sure. I haven't quite looked at the full list, but some people here have done this program with me. So you first of all do a big scan of what might be coming up in the future. The second thing is you assess, and we use some tools to see which are the most plausible ones. Then you choose which ones are going to have the biggest impact on your industry. And finally, you look at how you can track those and build them into your strategic plan. Now, today, when we're talking about artificial intelligence, we can take for granted that those first 3 stages have already happened. AI is out there. As I said, it's been there for a while. We've assessed that it's going to have an impact, and it already is having an impact. And we can choose that if you're choosing something that's going to affect you in the short term and medium term, AI is going to be one of these things. So today is very much about how you then integrate AI. So can I ask you to trust me and take it from me that AI is here and is here to stay. It's not one of those hyped technologies that you think, oh, is this going to be around next year? And there's a lot of hype about it, but there's also a lot of solid evidence that it's going to really change the way that we do business, the way that we live our lives. So let's look at, like we're talking about the tracking thing. And the reason I want to share this now is because I still get questions from people saying, is this hype? Is this going to go away? And it reminds me of when I first started my very first business in a previous life was building websites. I think John Denton, we may have known each other back then when I was building websites for businesses. And I remember this was in the mid-1990s. So in the 1900s, when I was a web designer, people would say to me, some people would say to me, oh, you know, this internet thing, do you think it's going to be around for a while, or do you think it's just a little bit of hype? But there are others who realize this potential. And I'm seeing a little bit of that with AI at the moment, that some people are still saying, oh, this is just overhyped and it won't be around. I think it is overhyped in some areas of how it's going to change the world, but it is still going to be around because it has been for a long time. It's just that very few people knew about it until now. Okay, so the first thing is I'm going to ask you to think about AI from a couple of perspectives. So just for yourself, and I'm going to ask you in a couple of minutes, assess yourself in your organization from a scale of 1 to 10 of where you are with artificial intelligence. Now, it's very subjective, if I just say that. So let me give you a couple of little frames to help you assess where you are. So the first one is, and then we'll come back to that 1 to 10. The first one is external versus internal. So let me explain what I mean by that. So there are 2 ways that you could use AI in your organization. The external way is that you use tools like ChatGPT, where it's an external tool, it's provided by somebody else, and you can use it to help you in your day-to-day work and in your organization, in the same way that you would use Google to do searches, or you could use any other, use Word and Excel. These are external tools that are provided to you. Internal is where you start building AI to work on your own internal data. So, for example, you might provide, at the internal level, you might provide a chatbot on your website where customers can ask questions about your area of expertise. A couple of weeks ago, I did one of these private sessions, and there was somebody who works in an air conditioning company. And what he wants to do is provide a way that customers can come to his site and they ask questions on their website, like my air conditioning isn't cooling, what can I do? And it's going to use their data, their knowledge base, to be able to provide those answers. So it's external versus internal. It's very easy to start by using the external tools, and I recommend that you do that. There's still some risks associated with that, but once you get to the internal things, and there are even bigger risks, because there's things like security and privacy of your information, and you've got customer data that you're giving people access to, and so on, or even that you're using. In fact, the second part of this is, if I ask you, how digital are you now? There are 5 levels of this. And I will ask you, actually, I'll ask you to do this. We'll do this as a poll. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so if I said to you, how digital are you in your organization? There's digital and there's digital. Okay, so the bottom level of digital is where you take things which are atoms and turn them into bits. So this is like the dream of the paperless office. So instead of passing around bits of paper, you're now sending things as digital documents. Okay, so maybe, and lots of organizations are at this level, where they've got very little physical stuff, especially when they're talking about knowledge workers, and everything is now digital and in bits. And the next level from that is what they call the cloud. So we take those bits, and rather than them being on individual people's laptops or individual computers or devices, they're now in some private cloud. You might call this the intranet, or you've got a network. So now everyone in the organization has access to these bits, rather than them having to, like me saying to Neil, Neil, can you send me that spreadsheet of this because I want to do some analysis on it? That data is available online in some private, secure cloud. The third level is, have you made that data open? And what this means is that you have some sort of way that other people from outside your organization can get access to that data securely and with your permission, of course. So, for example, in the Australian banking system at the moment, we have this thing called open banking. It's legislated. So banks obviously love to have access to your financial information, and they can analyze that and they can sell you more products and so on. But now, by law, they have to allow other third-party applications to also have access to that information with your permission. For example, in Sweden, there's somebody's created a very clever app that you can sign up to this app. And what this app will do is it will analyze your credit card transactions, and it will then tell you, based on your purchasing, whether you're purchasing things, it will make recommendations about more sustainable products that you could be buying as replacements for your current purchases. So you give this app access to your financial data, to your banking data and your credit card data, and it provides a service to you. And now, like in Australia as well, in the banking system, banks have to provide that. The next level is AI. So this is the level where it's not just people getting access to your data or just an app, but it's artificial intelligence, which can then access that data and provide analysis on it. The last level, which very few organizations have, is at the platform level. This is where you actually change your business model. So I think the best example I can give people around a platform is the Apple App Store. So Apple what is Apple? Apple is a hardware company. They sell things like this. They sell phones and tablets and laptops. That's where they make most of their money. But they also have an app store, which is a multi-billion-dollar a year revenue earner for them. And think about the app store. By the way, when the iPhone was first being created, Steve Jobs was dead against the idea of having an app store. He wanted the iPhone to only have Apple's own apps on there. He definitely didn't want other businesses to be able to provide apps on the App Store. And so he had to be dragged kicking and screaming to allow that to happen. And of course, that's a big part of the iPhone success. But if you think about the App Store, what Apple is doing is allowing other businesses to sell products to Apple customers on their devices. Okay, so this is what a platform is. So it's not you selling to your customers, you're providing a platform for other businesses to sell to your customers. And there have been a number of businesses that have done this. There have been banks that have now turned into platforms where now instead of them lending money to customers, they allow other institutions to operate on their platform to sell products to their customers and so on. So if I asked you, where do you think you are now in terms of being digital? Okay, so a lot of people at the moment at the stage where you're open, which is really good, because that lets you, if you're working internally with AI, being open means that it's easier then to build AI on top of that open infrastructure. It's much harder to build AI, say if you're down here, if everything that you had was digital, but it was based on data on somebody's computer, their spreadsheets and Word documents that people have to share around every time people want information, it's much harder for AI to work on that data. So being it open is really good. AI is fantastic. And yeah, it's great to see that we've got at least one person here who's thinking about platform. So if I now said to you, where are you now on a scale of 1 to 10? Where are you? Just in the chat, can you just share? I won't read out the names, but I'm just curious to know on a scale of 1 to 10. So 10 is we have built a platform where now we're selling, we're allowing other people to sell to our customers or get access to our customers using the platform. Where are you? Yeah. Okay, great. So this is just for you at the moment. And this is not, whenever I ask these 1 to 10 questions, it's not saying, this is bad or good, it's just here's where you are at the moment. And then what can you do to shift the scale, maybe a couple of notches to the right. So let me talk through some of these things. Let's look at this first area, which is solving problems. So I kind of like some technology and I like some kind of cool stuff, but I always look at what problem does this solve for people? And that's, in fact, when we do this future scenarios program, when we're looking at assessing whether things are plausible or not, one of the tests we use is this solving a problem for somebody? So, you know, there's a lot of talk about, let me just go off on a tangent for a bit, a lot of talk about cryptocurrency. And I wonder, like, what problem is it actually solving? And some people will say, well, crypto is solving the problem of the global banking system controlling all the money in the world, and crypto allows us to break free of that. And I go, yeah, really? But yeah, that might be true, but who really cares about that? So crypto doesn't really solve a real problem in the world. So I think crypto is still hype. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm not offering any financial advice here, but it's an example of something which is hype. And if you're looking at some things around AI is a very broad term. Some of those things are not solving problems for people. So I can take my old blog posts and say to ChatGPT, I'm going to paste in this blog post, rewrite it in the form of a Shakespeare sonnet. And it will do that. And it's kind of cool and nifty. And you go, wow, I can't believe that AI can do that in seconds. It absolutely can, literally can. But I go, well, what problem is it really solving? So first question is, what problems are we solving? And ideally, what problems are we solving for our customers, clients, patients, stakeholders? So as we go through this, I'm going to ask you 10 questions, and I'm going to ask you to rate yourself privately. I'm not going to ask you to share it in chat, from either 0, 1, or 2, based on where you are at the moment. Later, I'll also send you this survey as well, so that you can do this later as well. But do this live if you're doing this live, or even if you're watching the recording. Let's do this. So let me ask you 3 questions here. So rate yourself. Don't need to share it with anyone. on a scale of 0, 1, or 2. So 0 is like we're familiar with AI, potential impact on organization. 0 is saying, no, we're not. 1 is saying, yeah, kind of somewhat. And 2 is, yeah, we've actually done some analysis and some assessment of it. Can I suggest, because you're doing this privately, that you're tough on yourself? Because you're better off scoring low and then looking at what you need to prioritize rather than giving yourself a 2 and gold stars for everything. Okay, just for yourself, 0, 1, or 2 in your familiarity with AI. The second one here is the one about customer experience. So we've identified how AI ultimately helps us do what our business is set out to do, which is to solve a problem for our customers. And when I say solve a problem, it could be solving a problem or helping them achieve a goal. And the third one in this area is we've looked at and done some assessment of cost savings or revenue opportunities. Okay, at the end of each of these 3 sections, so when we talk about customers, team, and governance, I'm going to stop and ask for questions, but let me give you a couple of examples of AI looking at solving customer problems. And the first one is an example of how I did it badly. But I'm sharing this one because this is something that happened 20 years ago. So Target in the US, they sent out, this is in the days of paper mail order catalogs, they sent out a catalog to one of their subscribers, and it was a 16-year-old girl who'd signed up to get Target catalogs in the post. And this catalog that she got had lots of ads for Target's maternity products and baby products. And her parents, when they saw this, they were furious. And the dad went to the manager at Target and said, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to get my daughter pregnant? Now, it turned out that she was already pregnant. She just hadn't told her parents. But Target, using even a very basic version of the AI that they had at the time, was able to determine, based on her changes in her buying habits, that she was probably pregnant and about to have a baby in X months' time. So now's the time to start sending her ads for maternity products and baby products. And this was quite a controversy at the time. That and all these articles were written about how Target figured out that a teenage girl was pregnant before her parents did. So this was using big data. So if you hear things like big data, predictive analytics, machine learning, they're all another term for AI. So AI is like the blanket term for all of those things. So more than 20 years ago, businesses were using AI to send targeted information, if you can excuse the phrase, targeted information to their customers. We see this all the time now with things like Netflix, Spotify, Amazon. People who bought this book also bought this other book. Your Netflix recommended for you is based on your watching habits from the past, but also Netflix knows that knows all the other customers who've watched the same movies or TV shows that you have, and knows that because we like to think that we're unique, but because we're kind of very similar, and Netflix knows that something that if I've watched the same thing as Carly or Jenny, then if Netflix recommends to me other things that Carly or Jenny have also watched, there's a good chance that I might be interested in them as well. Spotify the same, Amazon the same. Sometimes in terms of customer experience, it may not be doing exactly the same thing, but it's still providing a similar experience. Susan from Engineers Australia, I don't know if you remember this, that some years ago, it's certainly pre-COVID, so maybe 2018, the Engineers Australia conference, they had Sophia the robot as one of the keynote speakers. And Sophia is this like full-scale robot with artificial intelligence built in. And I'm pretty sure it was the Engineers Australia National Conference, right, Susan? Yes, you're nodding there, right? So they had Sophia as the main keynote speaker at the conference, as the new keynote speaker. Who should they have had? Me, right? They should have, absolutely. Am I better than Sophia the robot? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm funnier, I'm more intelligent at answering questions, I've had more rapport with the audience. However, part of the experience that Sophia provided was having a really interesting talking point for people at the conference. It opened up people's eyes to the future. It got them thinking about what's possible, not in the future, but only now. And you know what? I do all those things as well. So as much as I'd like to think I'm better than Sophia, when you think about what's the customer experience, sometimes it's not necessarily you. It may not be exactly like AI providing exactly what you provide, but it's still providing an experience that customers want. Okay, so let's get rid of Sophia, my competition. Let's look at this second area, and this is where, so customers is looking externally. Let's look internally at your team. There is quite a lot of real concern from employees within organizations about AI and what it's going to do. Is it going to take my job? Is it going to replace what I do? And even if they're not thinking that, they might be thinking, do I need to completely change my skill base now so that I can work with AI? And you know what? Some of these concerns, they're real and they're legitimate. So let's look at what you're doing in your organization internally to look at AI. So I've got 3 questions for you again, for you to assess yourself, 0, 1, or 2. So this is the first one. So actually, we've got a plan in place for working with the people in our team. And first of all, making them aware of AI. And secondly, talking about training employees on AI and how it's going to impact their roles. And the second question is, are we encouraging all the way through the organization, leaders and managers to facilitate and embrace and encourage their team members to use AI? So within their teams. So not necessarily only individually, but you know, are you doing this? That like AI is being encouraged within the organization, rather than just something that an innovation team is going to do, or an R&D team is going to do, or even worse, an IT team is going to do. Nothing wrong with IT teams. I used to work as in one of them, but it's really bad if you say AI is technology, therefore only IT should be looking at it and telling us what to do. It's bad for the rest of the organization. Okay, and the third question in this area is AI champion. So I'm a real champion of the idea of having champions. So I run another program, bit of a tangent here, I run another program called Change Champions. And this is for organizations who want to do innovation and change. And the reason innovation programs top down don't work is because, well, a couple of reasons. One is that you get the problem of saying, that people say, oh, we've got an innovation team now, so any innovation, we'll let them do it. So that doesn't work. The second reason it doesn't work is because when you try to impose it from the top down, not everybody is on board equally. But if you're trying to do it from top down, it's very difficult to do something that gets the people who are the champions. So in my Change Champions program, what I say to an organization is, give me your 10 or 12 people who are really focused on change. In this case, let's talk about AI. Give me 10 or 12 people who are really enthusiastic about AI, and I'll work with them over 3 to 6 months, and we'll talk about how they can inject it into the organization. So you find the people who don't need to be persuaded, they don't need to be convinced, they'll do it in their spare time, they do it even if they weren't being paid for it, and you say, let's enable them. Let's give them let's focus all our resources on them. So have you identified AI champions in your team? I'm not saying they should work with me, but they're the sort of people that you should be focusing on and give them the resources. Because ultimately, the research shows that AI and humans together are better than either of them alone. So all the research shows this. So if you, for example, the best AI and the best computer chess players. So, you know, you've got chess, if you get a chess app on a free chess app on your iPhone or your Android phone, it is better than 90% of the players out there. However, a chess grandmaster using an AI app is better than either the AI app or another grandmaster. So AI and humans together are better than either of them alone. So this is where AI is going to be really useful if people are on board with it. Okay, so I'm going to stop for questions soon around this area. But before I do that, let me show you which jobs are at the greatest risk of, which jobs are most vulnerable by 2025 due to AI. So this research was done. I did the research myself. I asked AI, which jobs are you going to put out of business? So this is, I asked ChatGPT, which jobs are going to be likely to be at most risk of AI. And it came up with this list of, I've listed the top 8 for you here. By the way, other people have done this research as well. If you use things like ChatGPT, you should always be skeptical about any sort of research results that it gives you. It's a really good starting point, but you should always do your follow-up research as well. But here are some of the jobs, and you can probably see why you can go, yeah, this makes sense, why this might be obsolete. So any sort of data entry or data processing jobs are likely to become largely replaced by AI. Jobs which are things like call center representatives, like call centers, especially when if you're doing chatbots. So chatbots on a website are pretty good. And in the future, there'll be voice-generated AI, which will be able to answer customer questions as well. Remember the Sophia the robot example. It doesn't mean that you know that AI sounds like you're talking to a human, but it may be able to provide as good a response to your problem as a human on the other end of a phone line would do. In healthcare, if this is already happening, that AI is able to detect from medical images, be able to detect anomalies and potential problems better than humans can. Things like assembly line jobs, especially around robotics. That's all, again, this is something that's already happening, and it's only going to get better, and it's going to be able to deal with unusual scenarios better than it does now. Legal work, a lot of professional service organizations are finding that AI is going to be a real disruptor for them. And I've been saying this for a decade now. If you work if your business, your industry more broadly, has been charging your clients in 6-minute increments, or has been charging your clients based on the amount of work you put in, you're vulnerable. And AI is going to make you very vulnerable, because why would you get a paralegal to do something that takes 3 hours when you've got something like ChatGPT, which can do it in 3 minutes? You wouldn't, right? You'd do the 3-minute job. But how are you going to charge your clients for that? You can't charge them only for the 3 minutes. But if your business model is based on that, then you're in a lot of trouble. Similarly, accounting, bookkeeping, there's sort of repetitive kind of tasks AI is going to be able to do. AI is doing a lot of work at the moment, and a lot of the buzz around ChatGPT is around how good it is at writing marketing copy, at writing news articles. For a few years now, some media organizations behind the scenes have been using AI to generate news reports and sports reports, because it's the sort of thing that AI can write really well. And yeah, like one other one is more and more autonomous vehicles, like truck drivers, delivery drivers. AI is being used in that area already. And so this is what the prediction is: in a couple of years. So 2025 is not that far away. By 2025, a lot of those jobs are going to become obsolete, or at least largely replaced. Now, the good news is AI is going to create more jobs than it destroys. The catch is they're not the same jobs. And so there's a lot of conversation now, a lot of organizations about what happens. You can't just say to a truck driver, you are now going to become an AI prompt expert, prompt design expert, because it's a completely different skill. So there are going to be some big changes in the way that we work in the next few years, in the next couple of years. So the third area is this area around governance. And this is really the reason why it's not necessarily that managers and leaders are laggards and Luddites when it comes to embracing AI. It's just that they've got so many other things to think about when they're talking about, at a leadership level and an organizational level, embracing AI. So here's the last round of questions to assess yourself. There are 4 of them in this section, so that overall you'll end up with 10 questions. So you'll end up with a score out of 20. So do we understand? Legal and regulatory, to start off with. The second one, which is exactly Shannon's question, the ethical implications of using AI. And there's ethical in a couple of ways. So there's bias that AI has, which is not always easy to determine. And the second thing is even the ethics of getting software to do what people used to do, and what does that mean for the workplace of the future? What does this mean for the whole idea of work? Is it going to make an employment and unemployment? And some big questions being asked there as well. The next one is, have we identified the risks and challenges of using AI? So have we done a proper risk analysis? And the last question, which I think many leaders and organizations don't ask this question often enough. Have we identified the risks and challenges of not using AI? So I often talk about this, that lots of people, you say, what's the business case for it? And generally the business case is, what's the return on investment, the ROI? But I think too often we don't ask the opposite question, which is a COI, which is a cost of inaction. So if I don't do this, what's the cost? And it's easy to ignore that because it's like status quo. It's like, do we take some action and do something with potential risk? It's easy to ignore the fact that if we don't do something, then there's still a risk, but perhaps your job's not on the line. Okay, so all right, so those are those four areas. Let me give you a couple of examples, and Shannon, I hope that this will cover some of that question that you were asking as well. Just last week with ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, as we know, I think most of us have some idea of what it is. It's an external tool that you can ask, just like you can go to Google and type in things, it'll give you answers. You can go to ChatGPT and ask it, type in things, and it will give you a response. It's like having an expert assistant at your fingertips, literally at your fingertips. And you can ask it stuff. And one of the areas that it's really good at is programming, because it was taught based on a whole bunch of programming code. And just last week, Samsung discovered that some of its software developers had uploaded some code to ChatGPT to ask it to find some bugs or improve the code in some way. Now, the rules around ChatGPT, whatever you upload to it, are owned by OpenAI. So the data you upload, it can use it for its training and so on. But Samsung employees were uploading this proprietary code. So that's a problem, right? And because they weren't doing it maliciously, they just hadn't been trained and educated and taught about the implications of uploading Samsung's own proprietary code to a public system. Okay, so these are some of the issues that leaders and managers face. So it's very easy for me to say, just use ChatGPT, like use it every day, just like I'm using. But it's not always easy, right? There's some governance issues to keep in mind. I'll give you some other examples. In this book by Kathy O'Neill, Weapons of Maths Destruction, if you don't have an American keyboard. She wrote this book a few years ago now, but it's really, she was a bit, she had a lot of foresight when she wrote this book, and she's talked about, and the subtitle is about big data. As I said, big data, predictive analysis, these are all words for AI, and it's talking about the bias in big data. So it's still a very, very relevant book, even though it's a few years old. So examples like policing. So police departments are using AI to determine where's the most likelihood, where's crime most likely to occur, based on where they've been asked, where they've been called out in the past, or where they've been the highest arrests. And of course, then the AI tells them to go to places where they've been there in the past and they've been monitoring people more. So poor neighborhoods, black neighborhoods in the US, they're the ones that get unfairly targeted by the AI, because the AI says that's where the arrests have been in the past, so that's where you should go in the future. It has been used for hiring decisions, hiring and firing, and there have been some court cases around that because people say have been fired, and I don't know why. And the HR or people in culture team says, well, the AI suggested that you weren't achieving performance results, but we can't explain why, because it's a black box hidden algorithm. If you've applied for a home loan in Australia or a change to your home loan arrangements in the last few years, almost certainly that has been touched by AI as part of the assessment process. In jails, AI is being used to predict whether somebody being released on parole is likely to reoffend. And again, you can imagine that there's inherent bias in that. So that bias, it's built into the training data if you're not careful. And if you're not careful about weeding out that bias, then it's very easy for AI to perpetuate the sort of biases that humans have had in the past. For example, Amazon, some years ago, tried to use AI in their hiring process to talk about not just hiring, but promotion, which are the best people to promote to leaders. And surprise, surprise, men are better candidates for leaders than women, because Amazon's data was based on the fact that there are more male leaders, and then they looked at the career paths of men in the organization before, and of course you have this privilege is then built into the AI. So you've got to be really careful around that. So Shannon, to answer your question, how can we mitigate this? It's not easy, but just be aware that it is an issue at the moment with AI, especially if you're using AI internally. Okay, I want to finish with a couple of little things, including a little bit of a puzzle, which will be interactive for you. So we talked about these three areas around AI from a business perspective. It's not everything around artificial intelligence, but I hope it's given you enough to now go away and say, what's my next step? What are these three areas do I need to look at first and talk to my leadership team around? Is it around what problems am I really solving? Is it about getting my people on board to come along on the journey? Or is it about taking the lead when we're talking about some of the governance issues? If you're interested in the Future Scenarios program, fantastic. You can find out about it at futurescenarios.com.au. I'd love to work with you, and we look at not only AI, but we look at other future trends as well. I do want to give you a little bit of an action plan here. Okay, so the first thing I'd suggest that you do, so this is actually one of the exercises from the Future Scenarios program, where it's talking about the future is going to keep changing, right? So you can do the program and you can say, here's where we are now, here are the trends that are going to affect us, but of course that's going to keep changing. Let's apply that to AI here. So tracking the future. Oh, Neil says, oh, okay, yeah, so how quickly do you think it'll become normal in business? Actually, Neil, for many businesses, it already is normal. That when you say become normal, do you mean that people are using AI in their business? Yeah, okay. I can see Neil nodding there. Yeah, so for many businesses, it's already normal. And again, like there's AI is such a big term that it applies to a whole bunch of things. So you might already be using it. So if you use Gmail, and when you're typing out your email message, it suggests an autocomplete for you. That's AI. That's already built in. If you're doing some marketing, then AI is going to determine whether your algorithms are going to be seen by your target customers and so on. So in many ways, it's already, but I think you're asking the bigger question of when is everyone going to say, yes, we're using AI everywhere. So it's not happening yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if it happens like normal in most businesses, well, end of next year. So we're talking about end of 2024, so 18 months from now. And as John says, yes. So Microsoft, which was one of the biggest investors in OpenAI, which has created ChatGPT, has now built it into its MS Office products. So it's got this thing called Copilot, which will help you. It's like the new, better version of Clippy. Remember Clippy from the old Microsoft thing, which is fortunately died now, but it's like the new version of Clippy, where it will help you write a document. It will help you create a presentation. It will help you get data from a spreadsheet. Yeah, so I think it's going to happen really quickly for the reason I'll tell you about in a couple of minutes. Okay, so for your action plan, can I suggest that you do this? You're thinking about using AI in your business. What triggers are you going to use to determine what your next step is going to be? And what I mean by triggers is like, what will change that makes you think, I really need to do this rather than I want to do this? And it might be that you hear that other people in your industry are doing it. It might be that your industry as a whole has decided to embrace it. It might be that a competitor is doing it. It might be that the government has banned AI. And so the Italian government a couple of weeks ago banned ChatGPT. So they're not always positive triggers. So these are triggers in the future outside your business that will make you reevaluate what you're going to do with AI. The next question is, how are you going to stay alert to those things? So is it that you're going to work with Gihan to do his future scenarios program? Or are you going to monitor what's going on with what the World Economic Forum is saying about the impact of AI? Are you going to look at CSIRO's report about the future of automation in the workplace? Is your industry association, ARI, are they running webinars around AI for people and culture leaders? Okay, how are you going to do it? The next question is when. So like, when are you going to do it? Like, are you going to every quarter look at it? Are you going to get a report from your AI champion every quarter? Or is it going to be every week at your weekly meetings? Are you going to ask team members, hey, have you seen anything interesting with AI this week? By the way, that's a good idea. I recommend that. You're welcome to borrow it. And the last question is, who's going to do it? It doesn't have to be you. There could be an AI champion in your team. Hint, if they're younger than you, that might be a good place to start looking, but it doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be. I don't want to be ageist here, but there are people who are really keen on this idea, and let them be the champions. Let them, with the right appropriate guardrails, let them be the ones who bring the ideas into the organization. Okay, so my last little bit, which is around the future, is a bit of a puzzle. So this is a puzzle that I remember hearing as a kid. I think I was in primary school or maybe in high school, so I was a teenager. And this puzzle, it's a maths puzzle, but don't worry if you're not good at maths, it's a pretty easy maths puzzle. And so there's this pond, which is growing lilies. And the number of lilies doubles in the pond every day. So the first day there's 1, the next day there's 2, the next day there's 4, the next day there's 8. So every morning you turn up and there's twice as many lilies in the pond. So fingers ready on keyboard to type in the chat the answer to the question. So the question is this, right? So the pond fills on day 28. So here's the question. When is a pond half full? Okay, Susan, day 27, Shannon, day 27, Jenny, day 27, Karen, so on. Absolutely right. Okay, so let me explain this. So on day 28, the pond is full. So the previous day, because it doubles every day, it's half full, right? Good, fun puzzle. Share it with your friends, your family, see how many people get the right answer. So that's where the puzzle stops. But that's not where my message stops. So let's go back a few more days. On day 26, it's a quarter full. Day 25 is less, day 24, 23. At the start of that week, the 4th week, it's less than 2%. It's 1.5%. And remember, there's 3 other weeks before that when the pond was almost empty. So if you were standing there every day from day 1, for the first 3 weeks, almost nothing happens. Even if the first day you got there was 21 days after the pond started filling, you'd think there's hardly anything here. I might as well go away. That pond will never fill up. And yet, because of this exponential growth, it fills within that last week. So most of the growth happens most of it happens in the last couple of days. And this is where we are with AI now, because it is exponential growth. It's learning from millions of people, hundreds of millions of people, from billions of data points, and it's growing exponentially. And there's a lot of things in our world now which are exponential. It's like social media, because we're connected in a network, networks grow exponentially. It's like a deadly virus that spreads through the world, that starts in one part and then grows exponentially because it infects people in a network. And AI is like this as well. I think the growth of AI is going to be even faster than this because of ChatGPT suddenly making this public. So, I said, I was working in AI 30 years ago, and it's been simmering away in the background. But now that it's public, this is when the exponential growth is really going to start. So don't wait until you see the pond half full, because we're at the point now where it's going to grow very, very quickly. Okay, if you'd like to chat with me more about the Future Scenarios program, please get in touch. As I said, this is This is a small group session, so you've all got my contact details, but of course it's all at gihanpereira.com as well. If you're one of Carly's clients, please get in touch with Carly as well, and we can talk about working together in the Future Scenarios program, or my keynote, which is Seeing into the Future. My last message, and I hope that the lily pad example has reinforced this, and don't wait for things to be perfect. Don't wait for all your ducks to line up in a row. Start before you're ready, because the future isn't going to wait for you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for taking part. Hope you got some value and some actions that you can take away. See you in the future. Bye for now.